Hey there everybody, welcome to the Tool for Forza YouTube channel. I'm Captain Nasties, and in this video today we are going to cover the brand new Fanatec drivers and firmware updates, and specifically their application to the Fanatec direct drive wheels. I'm going to share a bunch of my different settings profiles and kind of how I got there and help you understand what these different new options do and what kind of feel you can expect and kind of how to get the most out of them. I've watched some other videos on YouTube on this subject, and I don't honestly think that they did a very good job. So now that that's out of the way, we know what we're going to be doing. I just want to pause real quick and say thank you for all the support in 2019. I never thought that the channel was going to kind of grow into what it has. I started doing this and I was on a cell phone and had never made a video before, and like now here we are. So thanks a bunch to everyone that's clicked like, that's subscribed, and most importantly people that have actually joined Discord and joined us on Xbox Live for racing. We have a really great group of people coming around, lots of new people in Discord. We have an SRS race now on Tuesday nights as well for Assetto Corsa. So join Discord if you're looking for fun people to hang out and sim race with, and thanks for all the support. If we keep getting good support, we'll keep going with the channel. Now that all that's out of the way, let's get into here what you came for. So I'm not going to tell you how to install these things on your PC because I watched Gamer Muscle struggle with it live, and I've talked to two other members of Tool for Forza, and we all kind of had to go about it a little bit differently. So my advice is going to be read the manual and do exactly what it says in the manual. And then if your wheel doesn't show up over here in the controller menu, this is what happened to me when I followed the instructions as per the manual on the website. Then all of a sudden it didn't show my wheel over here. I just uninstalled and reinstalled the Fanatec driver through, like here, through add or remove programs, and then I went down to Fanatec and un and reinstalled there. So that's how I fixed it, but it might be different for you. And read the manual, and it's kind of a hassle getting these installed is the bottom line. So, but it's totally worth it, and these settings really add a lot to the feel and the functionality of Fanatec Wheelbase, and they address a lot of the shortcomings that I'd identified in my previous videos. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy, and I had a lot of fun actually playing with all these settings and making adjustments and just kind of working with other people in the club to talk about what we thought all this stuff does. So you need to be on PC driver 352, you need to be on wheelbase firmware 669, and you need to be on wheelbase motor firmware 38. And I should say this video is recorded on December 23rd, 2019. So once you've got all that set up and you're good to go there, the next thing you're going to want to do is go into Fanalabs. So before I even go into the settings and things like that, I'm just going to go through my strategy and how I configure Fanalabs so I know what's going on, because it can get confusing. So what I do is I make a name for the type of wheel rim that I made the tuning profile for. And in my opinion, I think having different tuning profiles for different wheel rims is really important. And so that's why I name them as such. And I kind of just add, the dynamic damper value. So like right here, it says round street 30 dynamic dampers. So that's the wheel setting I use when I'm driving my round rim on street cars. Okay, it has more dynamic damping than my round rim setting for race cars. So this would be like what I use for GT4 cars or older GT3 cars that still have round rims. And then of course Formula Carbon GT3, F3, F1, yada. It's really nice with Fanalabs because you can have just infinite profiles, which is really cool. And what I recommend doing is if you have two PCs, what I do now is I have Fanalabs open, or sorry, if you have two monitors, I have Fanalabs open on my second monitor all the time, and I can quickly just select profiles. Even if you're in the game, you can just scroll right over, at least in AC, and it's working out really good for me. So that's just my kind of saving and naming strategy. I think that's important because you're going to want to be very organized as you do all this. And I try to have less tuning profiles in Assetto Corsa, kind of keep and then make these fine adjustments on the wheel here. So I think I've only got 4 different presets total in Assetto Corsa that also are named the same way and correlate with this. So when I load a profile in Assetto Corsa, I load the matching profile when Fanalabs. And it sounds confusing, and it kind of is, but once you get used to it and you have a good naming formula, I think you're going to be all set. So let's jump into the tuning menu here. So I'm going to talk about everything, and I'm just going to spend time on the new stuff. So for maximum steering angle, now for me, auto doesn't work. If I put Assetto Corsa on 1080 in-game and set it to auto on the wheel, when I look at the hands and the steering wheel position in-game versus real world, they don't line up. So I actually have to match my sensitivity setting on the wheel, or sorry, maximum steering angle, SEN, on the wheel to whatever I have in Assetto Corsa. I've heard people say auto works. I don't know what that's all about. Just wanted to call that out real quick. For overall FFB strength, I always run this at 100 on the wheel, and then I turn it down in-game. So my base gain setting in Assetto Corsa is 40%, and then it's always at 100 on the wheel here. So let's talk about a new setting that I was really excited about, but now I'm not after playing around with it a whole bunch. So it's this linearity setting. So if we read this here, allows maximum peak force due to the nature of holding peak forces. This can cause non-linearity during long sustains, high holding forces. on reduces overall FFB force to a level which guarantees linear behavior. So that I don't like this setting at all. It takes the dynamic range out of the wheel, and that's exactly why you have a direct drive wheel in the first place. So that's not a setting I recommend using at all. I really don't like it. It just makes the force feedback feel like less. I'm not a fan. So the next thing here is natural damper, and I'm still going to say that this is the most important setting on the entire wheelbase, and it's not a new setting, but what natural damper does is it dictates the speed at which the wheel reacts to like self-aligning torque or bumps or things like that. So it has nothing to do with like the overall output. It actually is just speed. And it's important to put some damping on these direct drive wheels because you're gripping the shaft, right? There's no belt to soak up any of that force feedback. You are holding on to the output shaft of an electric motor, and you must dampen it if you want to feel anything like a car. It comes up at 50 out of the box at Fanatec. That's way too high. I run this at 15% typically for open wheel cars and for race cars on the round rim, but I move it all the way up to 30 for street cars, which will have a much less precise kind of feeling and fast, steering going on. So that's just my 2 cents about that. So natural friction. So now we're going to get into this and natural inertia because these two are very much related. So I used to recommend running natural friction at 3 in my previous videos because the wheel just felt too light at low force feedback levels. And if you turn it up more than 3, it would feel really grainy and it felt like absolute garbage. So now that this natural inertia setting has come out, I run natural friction at 0. And the downside, there is a downside to doing this. If you're not moving, the wheel is extremely light with natural friction at 0, but I don't really give a shit about what my force feedback feels like when I'm not moving, if I can make it better when I am moving. And I've done that with this natural inertia setting here. So this natural inertia setting, we'll go ahead and read the description. Natural inertia simulates additional weight on the steering axis. Higher values make the wheel feel heavier than it is. This can help making natural friction less sticky, like I said previously. Inertia can hinder oscillations from starting, but will make already happening oscillations worse. Too high settings can slow down reaction and reduce feel. And that's totally true. So I cranked this thing all the way up, and the car felt like a rubber jello kind of like mess. So, but I wanted more weight in the wheel. So on this particular setting, I've got this up at 10, and that just adds good, some good weight. I feel like the lower to mid force feedback values are more pronounced, but there's still enough dynamic range. So the difference in really high stuff is still like super noticeable, but it just adds a really nice weight to the wheel. I run this at 10 on this particular settings. I run it at 6 on some cars that don't have power steering, and I run it all the way up at 15 on F1 cars that do, like the 2019 RSS car. I did some testing with that, and that car has really light steering. So I just cranked that up, and it really made it feel a lot better. So that's a big setting I'm a big fan of. So the next setting here is the interpolation setting, and this is a really cool setting, but it's not really needed on Assetto Corsa, and I'm going to tell you why. So I think this is essentially designed for iRacing. Let me read the description first. I'm getting ahead of myself. So this filter turns rough, low resolution game FFB effects into smooth effects. Higher values will increase smoothing. Find a good sweet spot where FFB isn't missing details but doesn't overwhelm you with noise. So that's a great explanation of what this is. So iRacing only sends out the force feedback signals at 60 hertz, so 60 times a second it gives you a force feedback signal. I believe Assetto Corsa is like 300 or something like that. It's way higher. So for on Assetto Corsa, it's really smooth because it's sending you all those signals, and so you don't really need to use this or very little of this particular setting because in my opinion it's already very smooth on Assetto Corsa. With iRacing, I suspect that, and this is what Barry Rowland also confirmed, is that increasing that setting smooths out the force feedback and honestly makes it feel more realistic on a iRacing. So this is a setting. 6 is kind of like the default setting where it doesn't really do anything according to Fanatec. I run this at 6 on all of my cars except for some of the open wheel cars. If it's too chattery going through the corners a little bit like that, then I'll increase that setting to 7. A little change goes a long way with this. The difference between 5 and 8 is like huge on this setting. And once you get like over 10 and higher, it kind of just all feels the same. It just gets like overly smooth and it just doesn't make any sense. So I would play with the range between like 5 to 8, but I think for most stuff you're just going to want to leave it on 6 in the Assetto Corsa, and maybe on some open wheel cars if they're a little bit chattery, just giving you a lot of noise through corners, and you can increase that to cut some of that down. So let's talk about the FEI setting. So this is an old setting, and I've always ran it typically at 80. And there's an issue that's present now with FEI where if you run this up at 100, then you'll get this crazy clunk in the wheel. Sometimes even it happens randomly, and sometimes it happens going through corners, and it's not good. It sounds like different than other force feedback. It doesn't feel good. It's not good. So The recommendation from Fanatec, and definitely my recommendation here as well, is turn FEI down to 80, and that clunk goes away. Now you want to keep FEI relatively high because it's also a type of smoothing, but it's an older version of smoothing. So they say that actually lower FEI increases latency in the force feedback. So you want to keep this as high as you can, right, 80, without getting that clunk. So that's my recommendation there. FEI is just the old version of smoothing, but now with interpolation, we can take care of it in a much more effective way that doesn't introduce any lag, according to Fanatec. Let's see here. So for force game effect strength, so I always run this at 100. This is just like a quick way to like adjust your force feedback depending on the game output. I don't want to mess with that. I want to just leave that at 100 and then tune everything else. So I always leave that at 100. Spring is always off. Damper is always off. Pedal vibration threshold, I set at 96. So when I get to 96% brake, that's when I'm supposed to feel the rumble motor, but really I have bass shakers and they overwhelm everything. For vibration strength, I have that off. I don't like vibration in the wheel. In AC, you get plenty of road texture through the wheel without having the vibration setting enabled, so I highly recommend leaving that off. And then for me, for brake force, I have it at max. I like super firm brakes. You guys have seen me on the stream. I race in racing shoes, so that's time for a horrible edit here. So I wanted to address the dynamic FFB settings as well, and you only need to use this setting if you have oscillation problems. And oscillation is if you're driving straight and the wheel starts turning itself like crazy, or even if you're just putting in a small amount of force feedback and it starts like jiggling back and forth like way too much, you need to control your oscillation. It doesn't seem to be a problem in Assetto Corsa because it has the dynamic damper that's available as an option that eliminates that, but I think in iRacing and in Race Room it's something that you need. So to set this up, I don't like to set a speed threshold to it, but if it only happens when you're going fast, then set a speed threshold that matches the mile an hour that you achieve, oscillation at. For the damper effect range, this is the degrees of wheel rotation that's going to take effect. You want to set this relatively small. I think starting out at, probably like 60 is probably a good number here. For a damper effect strength, I don't really know what to tell you here. I would maybe start with this at, like a low value, like start at 5 or 10 and move up until your oscillation goes away. But you want to run this as low as possible so it doesn't hinder other parts of your force feedback. Now, one thing that I've been told, but again I haven't actually tested, is that this setting will not take effect on the wheel unless you enable the actual damper setting, not the natural damper setting, but the standalone damper setting that's available. Yeah, game damper effect strength. So I've been told that you need to enable that to make that oscillation fix happen. And just wanted to insert this here, and then we'll go back to looking at the rest of my settings. That's all about. So those are the settings. I hope that helped. Now I'm just going to show you a couple of my profiles just to give you an idea about some of my decision making, and hopefully that'll help you. So we were just looking at, I could probably tell you here, my round rim. Yeah, 1080. Right. We're looking at my round rim race car profile there for like GT4 cars. Let's look at my Formula Carbon wheel setting that I'd made for open wheelers, specifically tuned it on the RSS F3, but I'm sure I'll use this on most open wheelers that don't have power steering. Whoops, oh God, don't overwrite. You want to click load, not save, guy. All right. So you can see here maximum steering angles at 900, and again, that's just because that's what I have my preset with the button mappings and things like that for this car in Assetto Corsa. So again, I have to have those matched for it to actually line up right. So I'm just going to go through the things I have different from the setting I just showed you. So you can see, again, my natural damper is down at 15 here. That's actually the same. My natural friction 0, my inertia is, it's 10 on this car. So I think that's actually, that's basically the same there. Oh, yeah. So the button bindings are a little bit different in-game. Let's see here, what else is different? FEI is on 80. Yeah, this is all very similar. Now, my inertia is on 6 here in the setting here, but I actually can see you might want to set this to 7. So this car is kind of twitchy and notchy and around corners, but it's an open wheel car, and if you watch people, it's going to kind of feel that way. So again, I think this one you kind of got to find your own space here. I ended up liking it. I thought I liked this at 7, which is why I wanted to load this profile. I'm going to resave this one with 7 here, just because it's 6. I remember it being a little chattery. Maybe I didn't save that when I was messing around with it before. So let me go ahead and just do that. And let me load one that is going to be a little bit different. So this is again, this is my force feedback profile for the Formula Carbon, but with the RSS Formula 1 car, which has power steering. We'll load this up. Well, load, please. Okay, so you can see again, I've got the damper at 15 on this as well. Now you can see the main difference here is my inertia setting, right? It's cranked up to 15% here. So this car had power steering. It didn't give me enough weight at 10, like I was using my F3 setting. I tuned that car first on here, so I added just 5% to the inertia. I could see going up a little bit more. I actually increased the gain in game a little bit on this car to 105% too. I probably just could have gone up on inertia, but you kind of got to find a balance. Again, I tend to like to tune the game force feedback as much as possible, and then fine tune on the wheelbase. I think that's well. I'll load up one more here for you guys. We'll do the street car. And you have to wait for it to load here. I think the reason it was at 6 on the F3 one is because I didn't wait for this to stop blinking before I looked at the settings, guys. I'm pretty sure I had that interpolation at 7 on that tune. So anyways, here. So the main difference here is my natural damper is on 30. So again, I want to really slow down the rotation of the wheel when I'm driving like street cars. They're not snappy like a race car or like a open wheeler. It just makes it feel much more realistic. And it makes sliding a lot more easy too, because the wheel doesn't just snap through your hands. You can actually control control it really nicely with catching slides and drifting and things like that. Let's see, my inertia here was at 10. Again, just wanted to add some weight. So that's about it. Tried to keep it sweet and short here for you guys. I guess 15 minutes wasn't all that sweet and short, but thanks for the support, and leave me a comment, a like, and please come join us on Discord and give us a subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. This is Captain Nasty's out.